All right, one of the connections we like to make when we talk about the cell cycle is what could happen when the cell cycle goes out of control, and that is what we frequently call cancer. So cancer cells are cells that are dividing out of control, and when the cells get out of control, they end up forming tumors. Now, you might wonder, you've heard these phrases that somebody has a growth a tumor and that tumor is sent off and somebody gets the results back and they are looking to find out if it's benign or malignant. And how do the doctors and how do the scientists know whether or not a tumor is in fact cancerous or it's just a unnaturally large group of cells? Well, a benign tumor is going to have normal looking cells. And so what you'll do is they start to look at the visual form of the cell, they look at their shape, they look at their nucleus, they'll look at the chromatin, and they'll have sort of a normal look to them. Cancer cells tend to have slightly small cytoplasm. They can sometimes have multiple nuclei. They can also have really different looking chromatin. They also can have a sort of unusual shape. And so these unusual aspects of those cells may in fact lead the thought to that being a malignant tumor or a tumor that has the capacity to spread or be cancerous. If a group of cells starts in one area of the body, breaks off, and then travels to other parts of the body, in other words, the cells start as maybe lung tissue, but they end up in the lymph nodes. That means that they've metastasized and that individual cancer cells are broken off and travel to different parts of the body. I will also point out there are genetic ways to test cells to see if there's anything wrong with those cells, to see if the cells are in fact have a known genetic marker that could lead us to knowing if they're cancer. And there's a lot more that goes into diagnosis other than looking at them. But this is sort of a nice introduction to the idea that there are some physical differences between these cells. Now, you might be wondering to yourself, well, what makes a cancer cell cancerous? And the fact is that in the normal cell cycle, where we go from M phase to interphase and then back around to M phase, I said that most normal cells spend the bulk of their life in interphase. But if something goes wrong within interphase and as a result the cell divides, and then rather than taking a slow journey through interphase, it rapidly gets back to M phase. It goes very, very quickly. That could be a sign that there's some sort of mutation, some sort of error within the cell. And I know that in your textbook they talk about a few of the different areas when we get into genetics, but the key thing to think about is that there are normal processes that happen within interphase, and if those processes break down, it may lead a cell to rapidly go from mitosis and then get quickly back into mitosis. And if that's the case, that would be abnormal growth, and it may be a sign that something has gone wrong and that has led to cancer. All right, the last thing to talk about when it comes to cancer are the treatments. And this is a really, really old pamphlet that was posted. I thought it was a very sort of interesting diagram because it's, well, not true anymore. But it does highlight two of the three major forms of treatment for cancer that exist. And there are other forms that are currently being worked on, some of which quite successfully. So the three most common, and the ones that are brought up in your book, are surgery. And in surgery, what you're looking to do is remove the cancer, surgically cut it out. And this would happen where you have a group of cells, they appear abnormal, and you look to cut them out. And hopefully that happens before the cells have had a chance to metastasize and spread to other parts of the body. We also have X-rays, and we use radiation therapy, either X-rays or radiation, and we target those at the cells. And what that will do is it will kill the cells by having high doses of radiation target cells. Radiation is not healthy for cells, and it may lead to the death of those abnormal cancer cells. And the other type is chemotherapy. And these are drugs that basically would interfere with the cell cycle of those cancer cells. So these are specifically cells that will target rapidly dividing cells. Chemotherapy is a very, very broad term, and there's very specific types of chemotherapy. There's also more broad forms of chemotherapy. But generally speaking, they're chemicals that will interfere with rapidly dividing cells, and specifically rapidly dividing cells that are characteristic of certain types of cancers. You'll also read about types of immunotherapy, where the body's own immune system is strengthened in order to fight off cancers. And then you may hear about other forms of treatment as well. This poster was meant to intend to say, don't get fooled by the promises of certain types of magical healing or that sort of thing. because there are a lot of times people will offer types of treatment that have not been well studied, but I do want you to know there are other forms of cancer treatment beyond just surgery, x-rays, and radium. There's also chemotherapy and immunotherapy as well. All right, I hope that was a helpful, quick review of learning objectives associated with cell division. And obviously, ask questions to your teacher if you need any extra support.